Welcome back to the deep dive. Today, we're focusing on a concept that, well, I think a lot of us feel it's just a personality trait, but it's actually a hidden psychological cost.
hmm
We are diving deep into the burden of being the emotional anchor, the
hmm
strong one, the person in the family or the friend group who's always that dependable pillar, the one absorbing all the shocks.
And if you are that person, you know the exhaustion runs so much deeper than just being busy.
Yeah.
The question you're probably asking yourself is the real mission of this deep dive?
What is it?
It's this. Why do I feel completely responsible for managing everyone else's emotions, their crises,
Hmm.
while my own emotional needs feel totally invisible, like this weight I have to carry in secret?
That's the critical point. Why is my own emotional state this silent burden? We should probably spend a minute just validating that feeling before we get into the nuts and bolts.
Our goal today is to radically reframe how you look at your own history and your patterns as an adult. We're going to unpack the specific psychological mechanisms that turned what was praised as childhood maturity.
Right. Oh, you were so mature for your age.
Exactly. And how that turned into an adult pattern of behavior that is just profoundly isolating
Yeah.
and exhausting. This perceived strength, we have to understand, it comes from a place of adaptation. It wasn't a choice.
Okay, let's dig into that. We have to start right there with the emotional reality of it, because that's what brings people to this topic. It's this profound paradox of being the strong one.
Yeah.
Outwardly, you seem completely capable, stable, resilient. You're the one who you never seem to break a sweat, even when everything around you is just falling apart.
And that paradox is the core insight from the source material.
Yeah.
It really highlights how that external projection of strength is, it's masking a deep internal exhaustion. The personal cost is enormous.
Right.
Your own emotional needs become what we're calling that silent burden, something you believe you can never, ever share.
So what does that exhaustion actually look like on, a regular Tuesday afternoon? It's not just feeling physically tired, is it?
No, not at all. It's a deep systemic depletion. It's caused by constant emotional labor. The sources explain that being the emotional anchor means you're acting as the primary regulator for an entire system.
A regulator.
A regulator. You are scanning the room, you're preemptively managing conflicts, you're interpreting these tiny, subtle cues of distress from other people, and you're putting out emotional fires before they can even erupt.
It sounds like being the air traffic controller for everyone else's unpredictable emotional flights.
Mhm.
And you can never clock out.
Precisely. And what's really fascinating is how that constant emotional vigilance translates physically. The
Mm.
source material notes this state of perpetual readiness often shows up as chronic muscle tension,
Oh, yeah.
unexplained anxiety, just this inability to relax or sleep disruption. Your nervous system is constantly humming on high alert.
Because the moment you stop regulating, the whole system you're supporting might just wobble or
Mhm.
collapse.
Exactly. And that's the fear.
I want to talk more about that feeling of the silent burden. If you're so good at helping other people, why does asking for help for yourself feel so just fundamentally wrong?
It's a kind of emotional economy that you learn really early on. If the whole system relies on your stability, if you are the only one holding things together, then expressing your own vulnerability feels like a direct threat.
A threat to the whole structure.
The entire structure.
Yeah.
The message that gets internalized is, if the anchor wobbles, the ship sinks. So you suppress, you compartmentalize, you handle it alone. You learned your value was in maintaining stability for others, not requiring it for yourself.
So if that external strength is just a mask for this internal scarcity, the next question is obvious. Why?
Mhm.
Why was I forced into this role? Let's trace this back to the origin point, because this is where we need to reevaluate what we even call maturity.
This is where it gets really insightful. That childhood maturity wasn't just some lucky personality trait you were born with. It was an essential, highly tuned, adaptive survival strategy.
A survival strategy.
A survival strategy tailored to fit the needs of your family environment. An environment that was maybe inconsistent or emotionally demanding or just lacked a reliable adult presence. When caregivers are unavailable or struggling themselves, the child's nervous system has to step up. It has to fill that regulatory void.
Okay, let's put a name to that. This is the core mechanism.
Yep.
This is where we define role reversal conditioning.
Yes, role reversal conditioning is the psychological term for what happens when the natural, healthy roles in a system get inverted. They get flipped.
So instead of the child relying on the adult,
The child is conditioned to take on the roles, emotional, logistical, regulatory peers that are normally an adult's job.
Hmm.
And the source material is very clear on this. This is a response to instability. It is not a proactive desire to be mature.
can you break down the different, flavors of that anchor role? I think a lot of people identify with the emotional caretaker, but there are other ways it shows up too.
Absolutely. There's the emotional anchor, which is the one we talk about most. The child who mediates every fight, absorbs a parent's anxiety, manages everyone's mood swings.
Okay.
Then there's the logistical anchor. This is often called the parentified child. They handle the practical stuff, making sure rent gets paid, doing the groceries, getting younger siblings to appointments.
Wow.
And finally, there's the regulatory anchor. That's the one who makes sure routines are kept, that the environment feels predictable and safe for everyone.
That's profound, because it suggests the child is learning that their primary value, their safest way to exist, is to be useful, to be stable, to be responsible for everyone else.
It creates this powerful unconscious logic. My needs are secondary. My needs might even be dangerous to the system's stability. Therefore, I must prioritize the system's needs over my own.
And taking on that anchor role becomes a protective measure.
It's a guarantee of survival. And this is why trying to stop being so responsible as an adult feels so deeply terrifying. You're threatening the very survival mechanism that got you here.
That makes perfect sense. If you were trained that stability depended entirely on your performance, then resting feels like dereliction of duty.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The training was so effective it became woven into your core identity. And this conditioning has major, major long-term implications. The listener is an adult now. Maybe they're out of that first environment, but they are still running the old programming.
So what does this survival strategy, this role reversal, what does it mean for the listener now? How does it manifest in their adult relationships, in their career?
Well, it means that the conditioning sets the stage for a really distinct adult pattern, which the source material frames as a trauma response.
A trauma response.
That mechanism that started as adaptation, it morphs into a compulsion, especially when it comes to seeking support
Mhm.
and setting boundaries.
And the specific behavior that's cited here is hyper-independence. I hear that term a lot, but how can we distinguish it? I mean, self-reliance is a good thing, right? It's celebrated. How can you tell when your independence is a strength versus when it's a self-sabotaging response?
That is the most critical question. Healthy independence is empowering. It's a choice you make because you feel capable. Hyper-independence, in this context, is crippling.
Crippling.
It's an intense, often compulsive reliance on yourself, and it's rooted in this deep-seated belief that you just cannot trust anyone else, either to handle their own emotional state or, crucially, to meet your needs.
So if your partner offers to take over a stressful task, the hyper-independent person says no. Not because they don't need the relief, but because accepting help feels vulnerable, and they were conditioned to believe vulnerability is dangerous.
Precisely. They might be thinking unconsciously, if I let you help, I lose control. If I lose control, the system failed, and I'll be left holding the pieces alone, just like when I was a kid. It's a defense mechanism on overdrive.
So they push away capable, loving people.
They do, because they believe deep down that support will inevitably lead to disappointment or just more cleanup work for them later.
This has to play out in the workplace too. The person who burns out over and over because they just refuse to delegate, they believe that if anyone else touches the project, it'll be done wrong and they'll just have to fix it anyway.
That's a perfect example. They're sacrificing their current well-being to protect against a theoretical future disappointment.
And it just reinforces that initial silent burden.
It guarantees the isolation. If you're hyper-independent, you see offers of help as either an insult to your capability or proof that the other person is going to fail you. You are locked in a self-imposed prison of strength.
It's really tragic because even if that emotional anchor is surrounded by truly loving, capable people today, they still function as if they are completely alone in the world.
They do. The coping mechanism they developed decades ago is still demanding total self-sufficiency.
It's still at the wheel.
It is. The self-reliance that we all celebrate is now on overdrive, and it's preventing genuine connection. When that drive was born from the emotional vacuum of role reversal, it stops being a healthy choice. It becomes a mandatory, painful reflex. That trauma response is maintaining an isolation that prevents the burden from ever being shared. But understanding this mechanism, recognizing the why, that is the first step toward loosening that anchor.
Okay, so let's synthesize this whole journey because we've moved through some heavy concepts, but the story we've uncovered is it's really cohesive. We started with that immediate visceral feeling, the crippling silent burn of being the strong one. We then recognized that the anchor role didn't come from some inherent strength, but from role reversal conditioning, and that was a critical survival strategy in childhood.
And we tracked that survival mechanism's lasting impact into adulthood, seeing how it now shows up as hyperindependence, which is fundamentally a trauma response designed to maintain control.
Right. So the person who needs support the most is psychologically incapable of accepting it, all because of those deeply ingrained lessons from their past.
It's an enormous realization when you finally see it.
Yeah. To understand that the trait you value most about yourself, your stability, your strength, may actually be the very thing that's keeping you from authentic connection and from rest. The goal isn't to get rid of your strength, but to retire the reflexive armor, to choose when and how to deploy it.
And if we connect this to the bigger picture, this raises a really important question for you to consider long after this deep dive is over. Look closely at the strengths you are most proud of, your resilience, your capability, your ability to handle any crisis, and ask yourself, how many of those essential skills were initially developed purely out of necessity? A protective shell built just for survival? And are they still truly serving your deepest needs today? Or are they preventing you from experiencing the vulnerable resting peace that you have more than earned? It might be time to think about transitioning from compelled survival to chosen strength.